on this edition of The Fifth Estate. They're everyone's best friend, but owning one is becoming a luxury not everyone can afford.
People don't know what's going on.
We've teamed up with our Radio-Canada colleagues at Enquête and Facture.
Hi, Tim. Charlesy.
How are you?
And with Marketplace to find out why the cost of vet visits and pet medicines has many owners struggling to pay the bills.
Like one of her legs surgery was $7,500. I couldn't afford it.
The squeeze is affecting vet workers, pet owners, and the animals.
You know, people are at times having to euthanize their animals because they can't pay for the care.
Those problems, symptoms of a bigger issue affecting pet care around the world, as big business sees an industry primed for profits.
There's a lot of money to be made in the pet industry. People will spend a lot of money on their pets. They'll even go into debt for their pets.
You need to be careful about the future of your sector and the future of veterinary care.
We'll show you what happens when multinational corporations and private equity take over your local vet clinic. And we'll take you inside the battle over who can sell you pet medicine. Why do they want to shut you down?
They want to keep vet medication only being sold in vet clinics.
How far will companies go to profit off your love for your pet? I'm Stephen D'Souza. This is The Fifth Estate. One look into the eyes of a pet, and it's clear why owners can't imagine their lives without them. More than half of Canadian households have one. That's over 16 million dogs and cats. But the cost of keeping these furry family members healthy is becoming harder and harder to handle.
I'm a fixed income senior, and the vet bills are just getting astronomical now.
Heaven forbid you have to have an operation, because then it's horrendously expensive. You're talking $5,000 to $6,000 depending on what it is. It's expensive.
The dental estimate was $1,300 to $1,800. And I'm stunned by it because I'm thinking I have a very healthy 4-year-old young dog.
I mean, definitely that's the message that everybody is giving me. It's just like, if you don't have the money, then you shouldn't own a pet.
This is son Ravi Chandran and Bhumi, a boxer mix she rescued in 2022.
Good shake. Sit. Good down.
But just months after adopting her, Ravi Chandran got a shock. Bhumi needed major leg surgery.
When I adopted her, they didn't tell me that she had any health issues. They said that she has a clean bill of health. And about 4 months in, 3-4 months in, we noticed a limp. And that's when we did the x-rays and then found out she has 2 torn ACLs.
Come on, come on.
Ravi Chandran had purchased pet insurance, but was told this was a pre-existing condition, so it wouldn't be covered.
So they quoted us $7,300, but that's per leg. So it's about $15,000. It's like, it was very scary to just have now this very expensive problem as someone who's quite low income. I wasn't really educated on how expensive it can get for surgeries.
Boomy. Yeah, good girl.
As an independent artist without the savings to cover the surgery, Ravi Chandran turned to crowdfunding.
I couldn't afford it. I had to go into my community members and who are very supportive, and I had to go onto Instagram and publicly be like, I can't afford this. This is what's happening, and I need help.
She raised nearly $5,000. That helped cover most of the first surgery. She's now saving for the other one.
I think it would be a lot easier if pet care was affordable. Bhumi is like my reminder to slow down. Bhumi is my reminder to be soft, to be gentle, to be loving. She's my reminder that things get better.
While her story may have a happy ending, not every pet is as lucky as Bhumi. More and more animals across the country are being surrendered, and so I'm in Toronto at the Humane Society to see what's going on.
is a hallway that houses some of our dogs.
And you are hearing across the industry that surrenders are up because of this high cost.
We are hearing that, yeah. We're still seeing individuals come in that are struggling to find care at all. So they know that they need care, they don't know what kind of care, or they're already afraid that it's going to be too expensive to access. They've gone to a vet clinic, they've been given a quote, they can't afford it, and now they're stuck. It breaks my heart.
Those scenes, the darker side of an industry on the rise. According to one estimate, the pet sector is worth over $4 billion in Canada. All that money has made anything pet-related, vet clinics, hospitals, pet pharma and food, a tempting target for investors and corporations.
It's a tsunami, and I think it's bigger than most people realize. This is so much bigger than vets, it's so much bigger than Main Street.
Rachel Wasserman is a business lawyer in Toronto. She's negotiated multi-million-dollar acquisitions for corporations like GFL and engaged private equity investors on behalf of clients. I wanted to better understand the issues that come up when corporations buy up multiple vet clinics.
There's a lot of money to be made in the pet industry. They know that people have an emotional connection to their pets. The research has shown that people are willing to go into debt for their pets. The research has shown that people are treating their pets more like children. And so if people are spending money, if you're an investor looking to invest in companies to make money, pet industry is a great place to go.
In 2010, nearly all of the vet clinics in Canada were independently owned. At that time, a small Ontario company called Vet Strategy owned 4 clinics. Slowly, one after another, they, along with corporations and private equity firms, bought up independent clinics. Now, 20% are corporately owned. 6 major players own 788 clinics, and Vet Strategy has nearly half of them.
But we're seeing Main Street slowly and quietly disappear, and we don't have the regulatory oversight necessary to prevent against that. If we don't do something now, in 10, 20 years, Main Street may cease to exist. We're starting to hit a critical inflection point where small business can't survive.
As a vet, when you're approached by private equity, what does that look like?
It's a giant cash windfall. They're very lucrative offers. And if you're a vet, I guarantee you've gotten multiple phone calls.
Tara Rissling is a vet in Calgary. In 2021, her 3-partner practice received one of those offers.
There was corporate interest in the practice and offers on the table. And if you own the non-majority of the shares, then you accept that the way the practice goes may not be the way you would have wanted it to go. For me, what the hardest part of all of that was is that I'd made a decision to go into a partnership where I didn't have control.
Part of the sale required her to work for the corporate clinic for 2 years.
I had no say in where prices were set. I think that it's hard for clients to get, let's say, 4 price increases in a year. Just, not having like decision-making abilities over like hiring, firing of support staff.
Wanting greater control, Rissling took her share of the sale and invested in Red Tree, her own independent clinic.
What's very important to me as an independent owner is that I have say in what equipment is in the clinic, the sort of breadth of diagnostic tests I can run in clinic and what the cost of those tests will be, how client complaints are dealt with. I have complete autonomy over that.
Rissling is up against 31 corporately owned clinics in Calgary alone, but the average client would have a hard time spotting the difference. most corporations list the clinics they own on their websites, not on the building. Rachel Wasserman says that's by design. Why won't private equity change the branding? Why not just say this is owned by company X now? Why keep it as sort of the mom and pop shop?
So private equity will do whatever makes the most money for them. And so they've done the research that says that you're going to make more money by keeping these vets branded the way they're branded.
One of the corporate clinics, VCA, does show their logo, but they are the exception. Most do not, and that has pet owners we spoke to frustrated.
They have their names on their signs up there, but we're not sure who owns them, and there's no identification on the door that they belong to somebody other than what's stated on their sign out front. So it's difficult to find out who actually owns them.
And I said, well, where is the owner? Are they on site? And then she finally releases the information that no, they're in Ontario. And I said, you're owned by a corporation? And reluctantly, she said yes.
But what's happening to vet clinics isn't unique. Private equity is buying up long-term care homes, dentists, they've moved into skilled trades, even funeral homes.
So it's changing the way we do business. A third person has entered the relationship. Now the investor is also part of this transaction.
Well, Krispy Kreme donuts, Keurig Green Mountain coffee, and now Panera Bread. An investment firm called JAB Holdings is buying.
One of the biggest investors is JAB Holdings, a private equity fund managing more than $50 billion in assets. It's also behind brands like Dr. Pepper and Peet's Coffee. In pet care, they own more than 1,000 NVA-branded animal hospitals and at least 140 clinics in Canada. Then there's Mars, yes, the chocolate company. Their corporate video highlights a whole division dedicated to pets. They've had their hands in the pet industry for over 60 years, with food brands like Pedigree and Whiskas. The American, family-owned corporation has 3,000 clinics worldwide and 158 VCA clinics in Canada. And these corporations own more than clinics, hospitals, and pet food. There's also pet insurance, diagnostic labs, and DNA testing, a practice known as vertical integration. From the pet owner's perspective, they may not necessarily realize what's going on, do they?
They might not know at all because the name remains the same, the vet remains the same. The only thing different is who's cashing the check at the end of the day.
And the bottom line is always profit, right? That's where the focus always is.
Focus is always on profit.
Coming up, do pet owners know what's happening inside Canadian clinics that have been taken over?
It's not what the people think the industry is, you know? It's just a money-making business that is so far removed from the care of animals.
And do you know your options when it comes to where you buy pet medication?
You do not have to buy from them. They're obliged to give you a prescription. It's that simple.
Grace Frankel has built her life around animals.
Jump, jump, good, jump, good.
And trains her dogs at this agility course she built on her rural Manitoba property. While her Australian Shepherd Finnegan looks healthy now, she says she almost lost him 2 years ago.
Weave, 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 weave. Yay! Tired.
He'd have a seizure, and then he'd have another, and they would get closer and closer together until we couldn't actually stop his seizing, until he was hospitalized. So he'd be hospitalized anywhere between 2 and 5 days, would be anywhere between $1,500 and $2,800. And that happened 7 or 8 times over a 7-month period.
Frankel and her veterinarian started keeping logs of Finnegan's behavior and diet. They discovered he had a gut disease.
Vitamin B12 and folate, because he was deficient in those things, in those tests that we did for his gut. And so once we did complete diet changes, supplemented the things he was missing, and in about 3 months, he turned around completely.
Finnegan hasn't had a seizure in 2 years, but keeping him alive requires a regimen of prescription medications and supplements.
So zonisamide is one of his medications. That's about $400. Then I have phenobarbital. So that is about $150. So that's $17.20-ish. That's kind of sad. And so for that's for about 3 months.
The only way Frankel can afford the nearly $600 per month for Finnegan is because she knows human med equivalents. She's a clinical pharmacist.
I know the medications that we use to treat humans, and there are some medications that cross over to animals. It's just access to those medications due to cost, and also how to access those medications. Veterinarians may not be familiar with that.
In other countries, like here in the US, owners can shop around and fill their prescriptions at any pharmacy, including big box stores like Costco. In Canada, many owners don't even realize that's an option, and it's not that simple. Do you think most people realize that they have these different options?
I think people have no idea they have these options. Only the very few do.
Well, why do you think that is?
My opinion would be that veterinarians have specifically tried to prevent people from understanding that there are other sources for their pet's medication.
How is our patient doing?
Howard Covent is a North Toronto vet with almost 40 years of experience. While regulators do guide vets on prescribing and dispensing, he says there's an inherent conflict of interest when veterinarians sell medications.
If you are the person prescribing the only medication that can save you, and I'm also the only one who's selling it, there's a problem there.
Covent has spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and fines, all because he thinks pharmacists should also be able to dispense.
I look at it as I am facilitating the access of medication for patients that need it, period. There's no question that veterinarians are in the best position to decide which medications are best for pets. The question is the medication available over the internet or at a pet pharmacy the same as the one that your veterinarian is selling? And the answer is yes. And if they're selling it for 30% less, and it's not going to endanger the animal to pick that medication up, why wouldn't you?
Covent supplied pharmacists for 25 years, but was unaware that the Ontario College of Vets changed the rules in 2015.
For some unknown reason in 2015, they added the words, "in reasonably limited quantities," in order to address a temporary shortage experienced by that other member or pharmacist.
Why do you think they brought in those new regulations?
In my opinion, it was to prevent pharmacies from competing with veterinarians.
And why would they want to do that?
Because veterinarians want to maintain that revenue for themselves.
Wendy Choi is one of the Toronto pharmacists Covent supplied meds to. She owns Canada Chemists in Toronto. Here, she fills human and pet prescriptions. Downstairs, online orders are filled and shipped out for her company, petsdrugmart.ca.
And I think my pharmacy provided a good alternative for people to get affordable medications.
We compared 6 doses of a flea and tick medication with the Toronto Vet Clinic, and it's 36% cheaper at Pet's Drug Mart. 11 pills of a human generic antibiotic are 40% cheaper.
I'm here to pick up prescription for Chase. Okay. Here's eye drops. The pricing was much better. The information flow from the staff is great.
The option for customers should be allowed, and people who can afford it and wants the convenience from them should buy from the vets.
Choi's road to dispensing pet meds hasn't been easy. She needed a supplier. She tried the manufacturers.
The universal answer was, we only sell to vet distributors.
She then reached out to the Ontario distributor, a cooperative owned by vets called Vet Purchasing. They also turned her away. She finally found Howard Covent. For 8 years, she got her supply from him. In 2017, one of the manufacturers, Bayer, complained. It was part of what Choi felt was an industry effort against her. Why did they want to shut you down?
They want to keep vet medication only being sold in vet clinics. I really felt I was bullied. Hi, Marithel.
Choi is still filling prescriptions for pet owners. She found a Quebec distributor willing to supply, and some manufacturers who would sell to her directly. She also fought back, reporting her struggle to the Competition Bureau.
Fair market competition is not in place, so I was fighting for my business for sure, but also all of these animals, I would be shut down and animals would not be served.
In October 2024, after dozens of complaints and a 2-year examination of access to pet medicine, Canada's Competition Bureau weighed in. What did you find?
So what we found is that there's the system of exclusive distribution, which means that the drug manufacturers sell exclusively to distributors, who then sell exclusively to veterinarians. Effectively, we're pushing aside or excluding pharmacists.
Are there any regulations in this industry right now that govern who they should be able to sell to?
No, there isn't. And in itself, the practice is not illegal.
The main distributor in Ontario is Vet Purchasing, the co-op that had rejected Choi. They confirm they solely distribute to their shareholders, who are veterinarians.
And so that's why our recommendation is to actually mandate the supply, because we want to ensure that pharmacists are able to participate in the marketplace.
Dr. Tim Arthur represents over 8,000 vets with Canada's National Vet Association. He says there's a reason veterinarians dispense medications.
Human pharmacists and human pharmacy technicians know nothing about the species I'm treating. Some of the drugs that I'm using don't have human equivalents, so they know little about those drugs.
Arthur says pet medications help veterinarians generate revenue, keeping costs for other services down.
Marking them up a little bit more, most people can still do it, and that gives us the money to keep prices on expensive stuff as low as we possibly can.
With most veterinary drugs being derived from human medication, Grace Frankel says allowing pharmacists more access will only help pets.
We know what's out there. We know the costs of things, and if veterinarians teach us a little bit about the anatomy, physiology about the animals, we might be able to reciprocate and say, okay, well, did you know that there's these medications that are available that could maybe, treat these certain diseases?
Weave, go buddy, go! Go buddy, go!
It's exactly how she and her vet saved Finnegan's life. As a pharmacist, she knew about a drug the vet did not.
So he probably should have died on that table that day, but because I made that split-second decision and because I had those connections that I'm forever grateful for, we were able to save him. I think that this is just an untapped opportunity for two different professions to work together. If opening this up and competition drives prices lower, I'm all for that.
Tim Arthur says change will come at a cost.
If we are directed to change, what we will have to do is rearrange, the money that potentially we won't get anymore, we're going to have to make it somewhere else. We need to keep the doors open, and you can't walk into a business and eliminate, 10% of their potential profits without having something change somewhere else.
Coming up, how corporate buyouts in the vet industry are causing big problems overseas.
Just going up and up and up and up and up. Like £800 for a tooth extraction is insane.
I don't think that anyone understood or predicted what would happen.
Hi, it's Stephen from the Fifth Estate calling. And here at home, vet workers reveal shocking pressure tactics from their new owners.
At one point, we were offered money and other incentives to convince staff members that the preferred vendor was the way to go.
This is London. The United Kingdom has a long-standing love affair with animals. From the royals, their dogs in Buckingham Palace, to music royalty, from politicians to pop culture.
Always is presented to perfection.
But there's a dramatic shift underway in the vet industry. Anything that can kind of quantify. I'm in the UK with my Radio-Canada colleague, Annie Houdon-Frissot. We're finding out why vet workers are striking.
They want to see a change in the veterinary sector.
And why pet owners are fed up.
Well, that's the shot.
Drilling.
How do you feel when you see the bill when it comes back?
Very depressed. As you've got kids and that as well, you know, a dog's part of the family, so the problem is you've got to treat it like a kid, you know what I mean? So you have to pay for it. Like a lot of pet owners won't go to vets because of the cost.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So then the poor dog's suffering.
Here in the UK, more than 60% of households own a pet. And 10 years ago, when they would take that pet to a clinic, almost all of them, about 90%, were independently owned. Corporate and private equity groups have transformed the vet care industry in the UK. So we're here to figure out just what impact that's had and how the country is trying to deal with it.
We want a fairer veterinary practices to work in. We want fair fees for clients, we want fair pay for staff, and we want smaller profits for the fat cats that are milking the veterinary industry. So I don't think
Susanna Hudson-Cook is on the front lines of this industry overhaul. As a vet for the past 10 years and chair of the British Veterinary Union, she's seen a significant change.
When did you first start to notice a shift in the industry?
the change in the UK happened in 1999, which is when the RCVS, which is our regulatory body, allowed for non-vets to own veterinary practices, and very quickly the corporates started to acquire practices across the UK. Yeah, and I think that there was a really big mistake, not because it's wrong for non-veterinary people to own practices, but because not enough thought was given to the potential consequences.
How would you describe the overall situation right now?
So there are areas of the UK where it would be very difficult for you to find, as a pet owner or as an employee seeking employment, an independent practice to work for or to register your pets with. The previous stages were more about acquiring the practices and not really interfering in the day-to-day running of the practice. But now I think we're in a different stage of their business strategy.
What impact is that having?
So I think that what they're seeing is a huge increase in prices. I think what a lot of these large corporations are doing is cutting staffing levels.
What does that do to the mental health of these staff?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of compassion fatigue in the industry. I think that people also have a lot of moral injury to themselves from the increases in price, because what they see is an animal that they could save, they could treat, but the barrier is cost.
Now the issues workers are facing in the UK are cropping up here. One of the UK's biggest consolidators, IVC Evidensia, also owns 365 Canadian clinics under the Vet Strategy banner.
More for you, more for our clients.
We spoke to a former Vet Strategy employee we're calling Sarah. We've replaced her voice and name due to her fear of reprisal.
It just all of a sudden became a numbers game. They said clinics were required to use the preferred vendors. They had to use meds that got the highest rebate from the pharma company, not the best ones for the animals. If they weren't a preferred vendor, they didn't want us using that.
Sarah reveals how staff were offered incentives.
At one point, we were offered money and other incentives to convince staff members that the preferred vendor was the way to go.
Sarah said when IVC Evidensia took over Vet Strategy, it became all about money. Fees were repeatedly increased, 17% in just half a year, and that many in upper management had little to no pet health experience.
Hi, it's Stephen from the Fifth Estate calling.
We also spoke with a former employee of a VCA clinic. We're calling her Megan.
It's not what the people think the industry is, you know? I think the big corporations are not looking after the staff. It's just a money-making business that's so far removed from the care of animals.
VCA is owned by Mars Pet Care. It owns 3,000 clinics worldwide and 158 in Canada.
What have you seen in your experience? Tell me about some of the things that have really stood out to you.
It's become just such a machine. I think clients are being overcharged. I think staff are being underpaid. I think clients are frustrated with the astronomical price of veterinary care, so the animals are suffering. A lot of staff are going on stress leave. There's a lot of mental health issues. There's a high suicide rate of veterinarians and of technicians.
Megan says clinic managers are told to increase prices, and they are also told to hide changes from pet owners.
There are sort of, creative price increases where we or the management are told to creatively increase prices in areas that clients won't notice.
She also says she's witnessed pressure tactics on vets in the clinic.
They have to submit weekly, monthly, quarterly, all kinds of reports about if targets are being met, if they're not being met, why.
According to Rachel Wasserman, business lawyer and fellow with the Canadian Anti-Monopoly Project, that's a red flag.
And so if the vet is making medical decisions, but also having to incorporate the profit motives of their investors, there's an inherent conflict there.
While Canada does not have a union for vets and vet care workers, the UK does. Veterinarian and chair Susanna Hudson-Cook says allowing too much corporate control is a slippery slope.
I think that there was a really big mistake made in 1999 in the UK to allow anyone to own a veterinary practice. I don't think that anyone in that decision-making process understood or predicted what would happen.
I guess at the end of the day, we really have to keep in mind that this is about these animals.
Exactly. You know, we're not just talking about numbers on a spreadsheet. We're talking about how you've provided life-saving care for a patient. Yeah, be aware. Don't go into it with your eyes closed.
Coming up, consolidation crackdown?
We need a big change in political will. This is going to need boots on the ground, people demanding change.
Should government regulators step in to protect pet owners?
So the clinic just had its 4 months since it's been open. There are days where I'm like, why did I do this? Or is it worth it?
Just north of Calgary, Tara Risling is on her way to work.
I do really still love being a vet, and I love my job, and like having the ability to create a place where I go every day that I can do the things I love and the way I want to do them.
As corporations continue to target the vet landscape in Canada, a newly opened independent clinic is becoming a rare sight. 4 months in, Risling is nervous about the future.
But now it's just sort of establishing a day-to-day rhythm with clientele and continuing to grow the practice. That plus the unknown of how it will all shake out is probably, those are two of the biggest challenges.
Ready to go
Hi,
to
buddy.
Did you?
Are you ready for your work day?
Rachel Wasserman says there will be fewer independent, vet-owned clinics like Risling's if Canadian regulators don't step in.
We need to change how we see business in this country, that big business isn't always better. So if we allow these roll-ups to continue without any intervention, being a vet, you're destined to be an employee for the rest of your life.
My name is Tim Arthur.
The head of Canada's National Vet Association sold his clinic to a corporation. Is there a downside to corporate and private equity ownership in the vet world?
I don't see it. I'm not really sure that a lot of young veterinarians nowadays are that interested in buying and in ownership. I think they're interested in their life being as least stressful as it possibly can.
The issues we're hearing, though, the stress, the increased workload, they're saying this is driven by the new corporate owners, that they're pushing revenue per visit, they're pushing more services on people to increase the number of patients being seen in a day. Is that something you're hearing?
And that's not what we're hearing. Personally, I have no concerns about it. I haven't seen a huge amount of damage done.
But vet workers we spoke to are seeing damage.
I think the industry, it's imploding. I think there's so many problems going on, and I think it's caused by big corporations.
We contacted Mars, the corporate owner of VCA clinics where Megan worked. Remember, Mars owns 3,000 clinics worldwide and 158 in Canada. We asked them about the claims of hidden price increases and pressure to increase profits. They said, "Our veterinary teams are expected to prioritize the health and welfare of the pets and are not encouraged or directed to recommend unnecessary services or products." And the vet worker we're calling Sarah, who used to work at a vet strategy clinic, she told us this.
It just all of a sudden became a numbers game. If you weren't generating this amount and you weren't doing this amount, then you are quote unquote trouble.
We are IVC Evidencia, building a workplace culture built on trust and commitment.
IVC Evidencia is Vet Strategy's parent company. In corporate ads like this, they boast a positive and flexible workplace. We asked them about Sarah's claims of pressure, price increases, and the hiring of inexperienced managers. They declined an interview and issued this response. At Vet Strategy, the health and welfare of the animals we treat is our top priority. A number of the statements provided to CBC do not accurately reflect Vet Strategy's policies. In their statement, they acknowledge targets and incentives as being in line with professional norms, but say their vets enjoy clinical freedom and prescribe on medical necessity. They did not comment on the hiring of management staff with little to no pet health experience. We know the Competition Bureau is keeping an eye on who can sell pet meds, but are they watching corporations buying up vet clinics?
So right now, about 20% of Canadian vet clinics, more than 50% of emergency hospital veterinary clinics are owned by corporations, and that number continues to rise. Does that concern you?
It does, but at the same time, the way the Bureau examines mergers is on a case-by-case basis.
Deals have to be a certain size before Canada's competition watchdog steps in.
A merger has to reach a certain threshold. What is that threshold?
93 million.
But if it's small, if it's a number of smaller ones, then does that necessarily trigger your attention then?
So those will be non-notifiable. And so no, there is no trigger on our end.
While Canada's regulatory body isn't stepping in yet on acquisitions under $93 million, our research has shown vet care monopolies emerging in communities across Canada. In Winnipeg, half of the 22 clinics are owned by Vet Strategy. In Thornhill, north of Toronto, Canadian consolidator P3 has bought up 3 clinics in a single neighborhood. In Penticton, BC, NVA owns 3 of the 5 clinics in town. In the United States, their Federal Trade Commission is doing something. Since 2017, they've required JAB, owner of NVA clinics, to divest specialty and emergency hospitals, and ordered Mars to also divest clinics.
So markets evolve, business realities evolve, and we need to make sure that as enforcers, we're fully adept to the business strategies of today.
That's former FTC Chair Lena Khan. While their threshold to intervene on an acquisition is $119.5 million, they have new rules to trigger a closer look at smaller deals. And in the UK, where 60% of clinics are owned by corporations, we've learned their regulator is trying to get a hold of the issue.
So you put out a call for information from the public. What was the response?
The response was incredible. We got 56,000 responses to this call for information. And I think what was notable is that we got about 10,000 responses from vets and veterinary nurses and other professionals themselves.
One of the key questions they're probing is whether pet owners are fully informed, especially when consolidators are buying up multiple parts of the sector.
Not only might people not realise that their local vet practice is owned by one of these large corporate groups, they might not then realise that the out-of-hours service that they're sent to, or the pharmacy that they buy their drugs from, or the referral centre if they have a more complex procedure, is also owned by the same group.
For the UK, the CMA market investigation is a race to catch up.
What powers do you have to compel companies to provide information and take action?
We do have powers to take quite strong actions if it's justified. We'll be asking for their accounts to explore profitability. We'll be looking at pricing information. We can require them to provide us with internal documents, and we can really try and analyse what's going on in this market.
Let's go sniff. Go sniff. Good girl.
Back in Canada, son Ravi Chandran is hoping for many good years with Bhumi, the boxer mix she rescued. She crowdfunded surgery for one of Bhumi's legs. Now she's doing all she can to save up and fix the other leg.
I have to raise the other 7,300 before she gets too old, because when they get older, they can't go under and come back.
Yeah, you want to sniff?
She doesn't want the high cost of care to break the bond they have.
I think everyone deserves to be loved, and not everyone can receive that love from another person. I think everyone can agree that their lives are better with their animals in it, and you know, it's not something that I think should be a cost barrier.